And I can't even start describing like the hard points of a polo that we went through, like $50,000 of fraud being taken out of your accounts when you only started the business, and it wasn't like nothing can happen, you can't sue it or get it back.
Christopher's journey is a living testament to unyielding passion, relentless dedication, and a holistic life approach.
We're on a mission, it's all about transportation, making sure that people get from A to B in the most fun, most convenient way possible.
Christopher embarked on a groundbreaking venture, Apollo Scooters. This visionary electric mobility enterprise aims to revolutionize sustainable transportation options across Canada.
Again, a lot of people are, overselling entrepreneurship as this beautiful, flexible, very, sexy new thing. But the reality is entrepreneurship is very, very hard, and it's very lonely, and it's gonna really like knock you down and walk all over you.
Before we let the stories of the past shape your future, it would mean the world to me if you could follow us or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us. Enjoy the conversation. So, without any further ado, Brandon, let the stories of the past
shape your future on the
Quoting Life podcast. So, typically the first question we like to ask our guests is kind of painting a picture of their life, and the way we like to do so is by asking them the initial steps, the first chapters of their lives. And you had the opportunity to grow up on the Mauritius Islands, which I find so interesting. I was wondering if you can paint us the context of those earlier days and how that shaped you to the person you are today.
Of course, yeah, no, with pleasure. So Mauritius is a beautiful tropical island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, 1.2 million population. So I was very, very fortunate to grow up there. It's one of the most multicultural societies with great diversity of religions and traditions. So it really allows you, it operates very as a community versus individualistic like the West. So that's always a really nice side of it. And then so more my context, I guess, on Mauritius is like I come from a family of 4 boys, so I have 3 brothers, I'm the youngest, and sports was at the heart of our family. So our father put us in rugby, football, golf, kitesurfing, like literally everything. So that was really nice. And what shaped a lot of my background is probably, I'll give you 2 big ones. Again, we had a very lovely childhood and incredibly grateful for our parents and how they did everything. But number one was discipline, I think. When we were young, our parents gave us a lot of things and a lot of freedom. And then at the age of 13, I personally was quite chubby, for example. And so my dad was like, okay, you're getting to your high school years. It's really important that you sort of, weight is important, and like being fit and being confident is really important. So let's go running every day and try and lose a bit of weight. And he would lead by example. So he would wake us up at 5 a.m. and be there every single day, and we'd go running together. And then he started putting a little bit of rewards and motivation because he understood how we operated. So we wanted an iPad, like an iPod, for example, like little iPod minis and back in those days. And he'd be like, if you lose 5 kilos or 7 kilos, I'll give you an iPod. And it was like, okay, that's great. And then we lost the weight. And then it went on like that. And after 2 years, I lost 19 kilos. And that was probably one of the most valuable life lessons for me. And it wasn't abusive or anything. I'm not saying it that way. I'm just saying it's like everyone has a different way of motivation. And for me, that was really the best because he was there all the time doing it. And again, the rewards were incredible. I felt much more confident. I got into the rugby team. I just felt amazing. And it was just through a bit of discipline. So that was one of the major life ones. And the second one I'll share is really the regret of not giving you 100%. And I'll go through a bit of a story on this. I used to play rugby very competitively from 10 to 18. I used to play for the national team of Mauritius. And at 16, 17, there was a different tournament, which is it's called 7-a-side rugby, which requires a lot more speed and fitness and everything else. So it goes through a selection process in which there's 100 people at the selection day. They only select 15, and you train 3-4 times a week for 6 months. And the coach selects 11 people to go to the tournament. So the first year I did it, got to the 15 selected, which was great. Trained with really good friends for 4 or 5 months. And then when it came to the weekend before the big tournament, he named the whole list of people, and I didn't make the cut. And that for me was one of the biggest failures and hardest times. I was I've worked so hard. I've been here with all my friends, and now I'm watching all my friends go to this tournament, and I didn't make the cut. So that really, really was a big hit on me. So the second year, I came back and like trained like 5 times harder, was much more fit, much more fast, much leaner. I actually gave my 100%, and I was like, this is, what I want to do. So made the 15, did the 6 months again. And then when we got to the selection, the weekend before the tournament, the coach was reading out the names of the people going. And on the 11th name, he doesn't say my name, and I don't get the cut either. But there was like not a sense of failure at all in that moment. It was like, I actually felt fantastic. I was like, listen, I've given my 100% and I just didn't make it. And like, I still feel amazing. And that, is part of life. So the big learning for me on that was, it was like, if you give your 100% and you fail, that's fine. You have zero regrets. But if you fail and you gave 50% of your energy and you say, what if, that can haunt you for life. So those were the two big ones for me. And it's, a bit more sports related, but the rest, living up in Mauritius was just a dream. So very grateful for that.
That's so interesting, Chris, that you mentioned that rugby story, because I already see the correlation with how your dad brought you up with that story. And even for me, I felt growing up that my teachers had a lot of confidence in me and instilled a lot of confidence in me and said that, oh, you're doing great, like continue, encourage. And I think that was so fundamental in me right now having high confidence and being able to pursue a lot of things and going after things and being a go-getter. I think that your dad definitely instilled that into you. And I'm wondering now, as a bit of a C-suite executive at Apollo, is that something you think about as well? Like, how can you, instill confidence into people by supporting them?
Yeah, 100%. I think life is about mentors, and it's about paying it forward. And everything our parents gave to us, or even during when I was at UBC, like the teachers, like Jeff Croker and everything, just the amount of support and help they give you when you're going through like an unstable time or you need advice and support is the most reassuring thing you can ever have, especially when you're young and you're unsure, right? You can make so many mistakes. Just having a bit of voice of confidence is so important. And I think the most important part now, like being where we are, I'm still 28, still young, but it's really paying it forward. So again, the amount of messages I get from UBC students asking for advice or jumping on a call or whatever, like just making sure that you remember that you were in that position and that you make the time, whatever it takes to have those conversations, because you can really help a lot of people's lives by doing it. And that's what I would love to do. Like I was a rugby coach last year for under 12 years old kids. Like I don't have much time now, but I will pay it forward as much as I can. And like you said, even for you, just that confidence is so inspiring, and it's great to find people like that. So how can you be that person in the future as well?
Chris, you sound like you've received a lot of mentorship. You've received a lot of peer guidance. And I'm sure we all have supporting figures in our lives who teach us valuable lessons every day. But I'm curious how you were able to take so much from them. Do you have any tips or tricks to take the best from the best?
For sure. I think it comes back to curiosity. Like, make sure when you're talking to a mentor, you're seeking out mentorships, make sure it's for the right reasons. Like, it's very easy to get caught up in all of these podcasts and all of these, internet things that are going around being like, make sure you ask for a mentorship and make sure you ask for coffee. I think whatever you put into it, you're going to get out of it. So when I was doing interviews or mentorship things, I would have notes. I would creep that person's life story from A to Z. Like I would know their Facebook, their Instagram, their families. Like it's a bit too much, but I wanted to make sure, they're giving me 30 minutes of their incredibly valuable time. Make sure you are ready and you know exactly what you want to get out of it. Don't ask them, like, don't waste that time at the end of the day. So when I would go for a coffee chat with, someone in the hospitality industry, I would make sure it's like, okay, I understand that this is the sacrifices you have to make. How does that sound from a person like this? And I'd be like, okay, what sacrifice did you have to make to go to it? Because I really wanted a real picture of it. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's really just, again, understanding what you want to get out of it first. And that takes a lot of self-reflection before doing it. So I would say, like, you're not going to know what you want to do. And the only way you're going to find out about what you want to do is by understanding what you don't want to do. And having those conversations is really important. And sometimes it's very hard for students to understand that, I'm not made for the corporate world, or like, just because in class, they sometimes show success is working at these big, huge companies, that might not be success for you. So the only way you're going to find out that is by going and having those conversations with those people. So if you're in university right now, I would highly urge you to take a bit of self-reflection and say, I like art, or I like agency, or I like this. I don't want to go into banking. Well, take your what you believe is your job, like your dream job role. Find that person on LinkedIn, write them a quick message saying, "Hey, I'm a student. I would love 30 minutes of a coffee time with you," and make sure that when you go to that coffee chat that you're 100% prepared, and you have everything ready to understand, is this what I want to do or not want to do. So my advice would be, again, just recapping it, is self-reflection, and then go out, be curious. Again, these people have been in your shoes, and I just want to offer advice and really help you, guide you, and just don't take that for granted. That's really important.
You mentioned defining success there, and that's something that has been a key question in my life for the last year. And so I find that getting the answer to that question is definitely a journey, and I think it's a never-ending journey. And so I think since you mentioned it, you definitely thought about it in the past, and I wonder what that journey of defining success was like, especially being in a school like Sauder where there's tremendous amounts of pressures to go into iBanking or to have like high grades. How did you come about to defining success for you?
Yeah, with pleasure. And I'm curious to hear your answer too after, Adam. I think success, it changes during every period of your life, right? When you're in middle school or high school, it's about impressing or being on a sports team or getting the girlfriend or whatever. And then as you go to university, it's getting the grades and being on these teams. And then when you just about finishing university, it's about getting that big corporate job. And then anyway, it just keeps changing. But for me, where I am today, I think in Apollo and the transition we're going and the growth we're going, I think success, I use a quote, and I love Winston Churchill, and his quote was, "Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm," and I just love that. I think like at the end of the day, it's like you are gonna fail, and the only way you are gonna learn is through failure. And we have had so much failures at Apollo, and the beautiful part is that we sit down after every failure and we say, "We're not going to do that again. This is why it failed, and now let's keep going." So that really is what my definition is for now. That might be different as I prioritize family and I go through the future as I go, but yeah, everyone has a different one. What about you, Adam? Have you sort of come up one or not yet?
Yeah, I think for me it's really about putting myself in challenging situations, and I think I kind of realized that coming to UBC and doing so many things at once, because I remember vividly the moment where I was just sitting in the library in CJAP and just feeling bored. And I was like, I'm not getting the most out of life at this moment in time. And I realized that's because I just wasn't challenging myself enough, whether that was through school or through all the other things I was doing. I just wasn't doing enough. And the moment I came to UBC, I started doing a lot of case comms, getting involved, talking to people, reaching out to people through coffee chats. And even though it was packed schedule and sometimes you have to be careful with burnouts and whatnot, it's really where I feel most alive, because I love to challenge myself and I love paths that are undefined. So that's definitely what it was for me.
Love it. Yeah, and that's a beautiful part of UBC as well, right? It's like we have so many resources, and we're so lucky to have been such a great university. So milk every chance you have, say yes to every opportunity, and learn from that. I agree.
You mentioned a lot of failures. What's the failure that taught you the most?
That's a good one. I mean, again, like I said, I think the one from rugby was probably the biggest one, and that happened at a very young age. Yeah, I can't really think too much more outside of it. I know, again, there's a lot of small failures, as a business, when you're, hitting this sales target or whatever. Those are all big ones, but again, it's about just going backwards and understanding why you failed. I can give a business example if you want. We went to, we launched in Best Buy in Canada, and that was huge for us. We're oh, this is amazing. Let's go. Let's, full blast. And then we didn't think about very small details of consumer packaging or instructions, for example. And when we launched, we had a huge return rate because people didn't want to download an app to unlock the speed. So that was a huge failure, because we're okay, we went all the way to the hard part of getting in store and having the right people and whatever. And then we just didn't think about consumer habits or the user experience of a customer and that friction point. That was a really good failure for us. So we stopped straight away. We hung all the scooters back. We fixed it, and now we're re-rolling out in the US. So again, as long as you're not complacent or you don't celebrate or turn failures into successes, which happens a lot in the corporate world, it's how do you present failures as successes? I hate that. I think that's one of the models at Apollo. It's celebrate failures and understand why it happened. That's probably the latest failure that I have right now, and I'm proud of it, because it allows us to go, into the US in Best Buy and like go at a much bigger volume, and not have to face those pains afterwards.
Entrepreneurship seems like a very like insecure job compared to like the corporate world and getting hired by a place where you can work like 9 to 5 and they assign you like all these responsibilities. And you mentioned experiencing a lot of failures. I'm sure it's not the best for your mental health. Do you have any advice as to, or any stories as to how like you were able to be positive and push through all these failures rather than turning into a downward spiral and not being able to make the best of these?
For sure, and that's a very good point, Brandon. I think again, a lot of people are overselling entrepreneurship as this beautiful, flexible, very sexy new thing, but the reality is entrepreneurship is very, very hard, and it's very lonely, and it's gonna really like knock you down and walk all over you. And I think, on our side, I'm very, very lucky to have Magic as my co-founder. For example, we started our company together, which is so important, because when you have a co-founder with you, you celebrate the highs together, and you also celebrate the failures together. Or you go through the failures together. And that's probably the only reason I could have gone through it that hard, is like, and I can't even start describing like the hard points of Apollo that we went through, like $50,000 of fraud being taken out of your accounts when you only started the business, and it wasn't like nothing can happen, you can't sue it or get it back. And we would sit there, like we would have a beer or something together and be like, okay, that was a tough day. And it's like, okay, but we're going to come back stronger, and we're together, and we'll get into this, right? Like that for me was probably the best thing that you can do. And that's me personally. Some people are very strong mentally and can do a startup themselves. So I think that was a big one. Secondly is having a support system. So again, making sure that you understand what your escape is, or how you can sort of tolerate it, and also be very vocal about it. I think lots of people keep it inside of them, or they think it's, I'm weak and I don't want to share that I'm weak, whatever. I think we've passed that time, and it's really nice that people are talking about mental health so much nowadays. Everyone's gone through it. They just haven't said it. So be vulnerable, share it. And again, I guarantee the resources out there are going to be really helpful. For me, I talk to mentors, or I'll talk to even my partner, has been incredibly supportive during the whole journey, right? So make sure you think about your cycle as well before. And then the last thing for me is understand your vice. What's your solution to it? It could be therapy. For me, it's exercise. When I've had the worst day, I'll go for a run, and I feel like I've just been injected with endorphins, and I don't know what it is. It's the best drug I can ever have in my life, right? That really, really gets me going, and it refreshes my head completely. So that's my way of coping with anxiety and sort of a bit of that. But I think it goes back again to the previous points, of which, before jumping into entrepreneurship, make sure it's the right reasons, understand what it implies. Again, corporate is very comfortable, it's very safe, it's not your own money. And if something happens, worst case, you just find another job. Although it does sound quite scary, being like, oh my God, I don't have a job. That's still a luxury to have, compared to when you're in entrepreneurship, you're liable for a lot of people's lives and salaries and your personal assets, etc. So just understand the scope before diving into it.
For sure. I think when you read an article like the Harvard Business Review, and you see that 72% of entrepreneurs experience like severe anxiety or depression, it does come as a quite shocking like statistic, and definitely probably paints a better picture of what entrepreneurship is. But the more we kind of ask that question, Brandon and myself, about when we ask people like, oh, how did you deal through mental health? How did you get over it? I find that there's always two answers that arise, and they seem like such simple answers, but in reality, they are very hard to do. And those are always communication and exercise. And even the other day on the exercise point, there was a Harvard professor that was talking about how they were doing a study between people that were doing exercising and learning at the same time versus sitting down and learning. And the people who exercised and learned were able to retain information a lot better. And I find that to be so interesting. And I'm wondering, did you ever have that realization of how important exercise was, and how important it is to take the time, even though you're so busy and your time is so precious, that you actually need to take that time to exercise and take care of your health, because or else you actually won't perform as well in your business?
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes back again. I was very fortunate to have sports like ingrained into my childhood, and that it just made everything. It just made everything so good. Like I can't emphasize enough how much sports is such a good vice, and it like every time I'm going through a really stressful period, if it's exams at UBC, I remember like I would wake up at 6, go for a run, and go straight to the library and come back, and I would feel unbelievable like every day, just like that release. And the scary part today is most like even in America, it's something like I think it was something like 50% of people haven't ever exercised. It's something ridiculous, and you're like, of course anxiety rates are going through the roof. Of course everything's like mental health's going through the roof. Like I'm not saying exercise as like a a triathlon or Ironman. I'm just saying like even just a quick run or like a walk to start it off. I think it's so important, but some people have different ways of doing it. Like you said, Adam, I think it's even communication. If it's therapy or whatever, it's like that's so important. Just be accountable for it and do what works for you. But I think exercise is just everything. It's the best feeling in the world, especially if you can do it in a team or community. It helps even more.
Kind of on the topic of communication, I was listening to one other podcast that you did, and you mentioned that The Hard Thing About Hard Things was one of your favorite books.
I love it.
And something you mentioned about it in the book, one part that I love is take care of the people, the products, and the profits in that order. Why is it so important to take care of the people first?
Because the people are what drive the whole business, right? So like, I can't emphasize enough, like the only reason we succeed at Apollo is because of the incredible team that we have, the people who do it every day. And it's not rocket science. It's the way you treat people, and the way you treat people is how people are going to treat customer service and the customer support customers or the vendors or the partners, and people want to work with people who have made them feel good. So I think it's at the end of the day, we're human. Everyone's human, and the whole point of a company is really, again, it's supposed to be memorable and it's supposed to be part of making people feel better and drive something good in the world. And I feel that that's why the things you're going to remember the most are always about the celebrations and the retreats and the team, and what you've managed to accomplish with the team. And I think that's why it's so important to always just make sure your team has all the resources, support, and care as they can. And that's how you create extraordinary companies. And I think that's our motto as well. So yeah, I think profits, of course, as a business, you have to be profitable, otherwise you fail, and etc. So some people don't understand that. But the people are just incredible. And that book for me was like the biggest wake up in life. It really gives you, for anybody who's curious about entrepreneurship, please read that book. It really paints a no filter sort of point, and it's very, very good. But I love that quote.
The first time I saw an electric scooter was probably around 10 years ago, and it was in elementary school. Someone just randomly rode it one day, and my first impression was like, oh, it's like a big bulky scooter, like why would someone get that? And, like, back in those days, I wouldn't really be walking far anyways because I was living pretty much right next to my elementary school. But nowadays, after watching Casey Neistat with his electric skateboard, and I think going into university, having to walk longer and longer distances, and having to be commuting a lot more, I've began to see like the innovation of the electric scooter and see how like dandy it is to get from place to place with such a small piece of equipment. And after interviewing Magic, it's been really cool, like just seeing Apollo scooters down the street, because I'm like, hey, like I know who made this, and I think it's just so awesome, like seeing you guys grow and succeed. And I'm wondering, what do you think is the key to success at Apollo?
Oof, that's a loaded question. I think believing in your product, but having the right mission. I think we're on a mission. It's all about transportation, making sure that people get from A to B in the most fun, most convenient way possible. And then you're solving a problem at the end of the day. Like today, 85% of people in Canada, or something like 80% of people in Canada, use their cars for less than 5-kilometer trips. That makes no sense. And again, when you try an electric scooter to your commute, you see how people feel, the smile, that like it's just convenient, cheap, and efficient, right? It's like you're not paying for insurance, you're not paying for the car, etc. So our mission is very strong, and that's, I think, one of the basic successes. It's like always reevaluating that mission, always pushing forward, and making sure that you're growing and you're sticking true to it. At the end of the day, we're solving a problem, and you need to make sure that problem is super, super clear. I think that mission evolves every year, and it changes a lot. As long as you are accountable for it and you're making it go forward a lot. And then, like I mentioned, the people. I think having the right people on the bus is also the most important thing. And that's a book from Jim Collins. I think it's Good to Great. It's really about how do you build the best company, and he talks about a bus and having the right team on the bus type of thing. So yeah, I think really the reason we got to where we are today is we have a very clear mission, and we're solving a really, really big problem that not many people have tried to solve. Scooters are very new, like you said, Brandon, and it's just the start of something beautiful, and there's no innovation, there's no tech in scooters, and we're the first company to do it. So it comes with a lot of risk, but again, with high risk comes high reward. And I think that's why we've been successful to date. It's because we're pushing every single boundary possible. And yeah, again, it's like you're riding an electric scooter is one of the best feelings in the world. You're floating, and you're just happy, and it's a bit like a endorphin boost again, like running. I think it's so important. And same as you, Brandon, like when I saw the electric scooters 10 years ago, I was like, I'm going to cycle, I'm going to walk, like I'm not going to jump on a scooter. But today, when I'm, if I go just down the road to get a haircut, it takes me 10 minutes in the car or 3 minutes by scooter. No questions asked, I'm taking a scooter, right? So it's really just making sure you have a very clear solution to a problem, and that you're always just making it better as you go forward.
I think for founders, sometimes a company can be a reflection of their purpose, and you kind of mentioned like Apollo's mission, now that's a driving factor of the company and its success. And even for this podcast, I think part of my purpose is to create impacts in people's lives. And then I think Brandon's is a lot more oriented towards curiosity. And then you put those two together, it makes a podcast. And that's reflected in this conversation and this product that we're offering. I'm wondering what's your personal purpose, and how does that reflect through Apollo? Did you ever think about it that way, or?
Yeah. I think my personal purpose is I don't know, I can get very deep with this, but for me, it's all about people again. It's about making sure that every interaction or every person I interact with leaves happier and motivated. I think it's like, again, I love hospitality, for example. I'm reading a hospitality book right now called Unreasonable Hospitality, and it's so incredible because and one of the quotes I think in there is all it takes for something extraordinary to happen is one person with enthusiasm. So that's something I really, really like to live by, because I think, again, just having that one person with enthusiasm can brighten up someone's day. And I feel like we're going to a shift of more people on their smartphones, nobody's talking to each other on the bus, and it's so important to make people feel that way. So I don't know, I can go again much deeper into this, but I just think of what will people say at my eulogy when I pass away at the end of the day. It's like, it's not about how much money you have in your bank account or whatever car you drive or whatever. It's really what that person made me feel and what they did for me. And for me, that's my biggest purpose. It's really just, making sure every single person on the team has a good experience, is heard, and is living their best self, or at least having a good interaction with you. And it's all about how you make people feel. I think that's my personal mission.
As per tradition on this podcast, our final question to the guest is to get your thoughts on a quote from a previous guest. And originally we were supposed to have you on the second episode, and our first guest was Anne Stone. So this quote is coming from Anne Stone, and it goes, "Making a difference is a matter of choice." What are your thoughts?
Oh, 100%. I love Anne Stone. I think she's just very fun, the way she goes through her courses and all. It is 100% a choice. I think, again, it goes back to what you want to do in life and what's your core mission. And I think making a difference is whatever you put into anything, it's that's what's going to come out. And our choice, again, is, we're doing this company, we're doing Apollo because we want to make a difference and we want to make mobility better for all. And again, that's our mission, right? So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of suffering, it's a lot of mental health, it's a lot of everything, but the reward is just so much greater. And worst case, like you said, Adam, we came from the corporate world, we came to a startup. Worst case, Apollo doesn't work out, we go back to the corporate world, and that's our safety net. And I don't want to, you shouldn't overthink that, right? So I think making a difference, again, it's, I'm not saying making a difference is starting a company and, making $100 million or whatever. Making a difference can start with the smallest things, and that's saying hi to a person on the street, or, carrying a stroller for someone up the stairs, or like just those small little things. That's a difference. And that's probably the most important difference, is that some people overthink. And I don't know. I think that's so important, and you can very quickly tell from a person how the way they treat people, or how they treat the security guard or the person grabbing the garbage. Those small differences are what you can really see if it's a good person, if they have the good values. And I wouldn't overthink it. I think, again, for students listening, it's like, you don't need to go crazy. Just start with something super small, and then build up as you go. And then if you love making those differences, great. That's sort of my philosophy on that question.
Thank you so much, Chris.